JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood is the first part in the Jojo series. I started watching Jojo a few years back and I've been a fan ever since. It's probably one of my favorite manga/anime of all time, and I'm not alone either. With a recent anime release, the series has exploded in popularity. I can't even go to my local church anymore without some guy in the back screaming, "Oh my god! Is that Jesus Christ from JoJo Part 7? But what makes JoJo such a special series? Well, to answer that question, we gotta go back. Back before all the stands, the auras, the mudas, all of that. Let's go back to JoJo Part 1, Phantom Blood. Before I actually start talking about Phantom Blood, I should probably explain how JoJo works as a whole. Basically, JoJo is split into 8 major parts, each of which follows a different member of the Joestar family, and each go on their own supernatural adventure, finding serial killers, becoming mob bosses, fighting ancient Aztec gods, and assassinating presidents. Yeah, it's pretty strange. Each part is isolated for the most part, with a few overlapping elements here and there. The story of Phantom Blood follows the rivalry between 2 characters. Our protagonist, the gentlemanly Jonathan Joestar, and his evil stepbrother, the cunning, manipulative, and overall jerk Dio Brando. This rivalry would last for generations and even span across multiple universes. Araki has stated he likes to write his main hero and villain as polar opposites, which is definitely true for most of the parts of JoJo, but I can't think of a better example than these 2 characters, and I don't think anything conveys this better than the actual first episode. The series starts out introducing our main hero and villain, Jonathan and... Wow, Darkrai. Just wow. Making an unfunny Kono Dioda joke? Really, Darkrai? That's pretty cringe, bro. From the first few minutes, we can already tell these 2 are polar opposites. Let's start with Dio. His first scene takes place in his home with his abusive father, and we can tell he's not in the best situation. He has to fight to survive, gambling just to get by. This leaves Dio cold and calculating, constantly thinking about how he can climb up higher, and never wanting to be looked down upon by anyone. He will use anything or anyone to achieve his goals. This is when we're introduced to our main protagonist, Jonathan Joestar. Jonathan's first on-screen action is getting his ass beat by some random bullies trying to protect a girl. Jonathan wants nothing more than to become a true gentleman. However, at the moment, he can't really back it up, and he's frustrated by this, wanting to become a stronger person. So we're only a few minutes in and we already have a good idea about who these characters are, and their goals, personalities, and motives. Everything from their social class to their views in the world are completely different. Now all that's left is for these 2 characters to collide. When Jonathan first meets Dio, he wants nothing more than to be friends with him, but we can already tell things aren't going to go so smoothly. Dio despises Jonathan, viewing him as nothing more than a spoiled brat that deserves nothing of his wealth or status, and only serves to stand in the way of obtaining the fortune he rightfully deserves. He then tries to systematically destroy Jonathan's life. He comes between him and his father, he ruins his reputation among his peers, and he even tries to ruin his relationship with Irina. This is when Jonathan's most endearing character trait is shown. He takes all this cruelty from Dio and becomes stronger from it, leading to his confrontation with Dio in one of my favorite beatdowns in the whole series. Hell yeah. This leads to Dio drastically changing his approach. He no longer views Jonathan as a spoiled little brat, and now sees him as an actual threat, and we get all this from the very first episode. If I were to hear one main complaint about Phantom Blood, it's that Jonathan's a boring character. And well, yeah, you're not completely wrong there. He's not nearly as entertaining as Joseph or a cool badass that punches women like Jotaro, but I wouldn't say he's a bad character. It's actually pretty interesting to see Araki's thought process while writing Jonathan. He felt limited since Jonathan was the very first JoJo, so we had to set the standard for future JoJos. At this point in writing the story, he already knew the series had potential to go on, so we wanted to write Jonathan as a symbol of purity and justice rather than a unique character. This is why Jonathan may be on the boring side, but I don't think it makes him a bad character by any means. And because of Jonathan, we can get far more unique and interesting characters down the line. All of Jonathan's descendants have inherited his sense of justice, no matter how different they may be, well, except for maybe Johnny, but that's a topic for another day. It's the same reason Giorno can murder people with bananas and become the head of a crime organization and still be the hero of the story, because he's inherited Jonathan's sense of justice and kindness. So I think we talked about those two characters enough. Let's move on to some other well-written characters in Phantom Blood, shall we? Here, let me just pull up my list right here. Let's see here. Yeah, the joke is there are none. Except for my husbando Speedwagon, of course. Ooh woo. While Jonathan and Dio are both great, well-written characters, I can't really say the same for the rest of the cast of Phantom Blood. Speedwagon adds some sex appeal, and Zeppeli has some cool moments, but I can't really talk about them in the same way I do Jonathan or Dio. Then near the end of the part, we get introduced to even more characters, only for them to die or leave the story as suddenly as they were introduced. Seriously, I think Danny got more development than this guy. And he's a fucking dog. This character is introduced for the sole purpose of getting murdered by Dio, but in the end I didn't really care, because I literally knew nothing about him. Who are all you people? The same goes for the villains. We spend 2.5 episodes watching Jonathan fight these zombie knights. And I think Bruford, oh wait, I'm sorry, Bluford, has a cool power, but he's not that interesting. And Tarkus is even worse. He's just a generic evil bad guy. I can kind of ignore this flaw because of how short the part is, but it's a shame considering how interesting some of the later side characters are. The fights in the show are pretty fun, though sure, they may not be nearly as interesting as later fights, but Hamon is still pretty cool. It's kinda just satisfying to watch vampires' heads explode. I especially like all the fights between Jonathan and Dio. While I love Phantom Blood, I'd be lying if I said it was flawless. It can be boring sometimes, especially around the middle. And overall, it felt like Araki was still figuring out what direction he wanted to take the series in. But that's kind of what I like about Araki as an author. He's constantly trying new things, so much so that the current part Jojolian isn't even recognizable compared to part 1. But that's one of the best parts about reading Jojo, seeing Araki improve and grow over time. Phantom Blood is a fun series on its own, but where it becomes something special is when you look at it in the larger context of Jojo. So yeah, I'll see you next time when I talk about Part 2, Battle Tendency, in the year 2040.